So, video about sheep. Was it really about sheep?
No.
No. Who was it about?
People.
People, us. Why was it about us?
Because God's the shepherd and we're the sheep.
God's the shepherd and we're the sheep. Who says that?
Jesus.
Jesus, right? We get that a couple of times, especially in John's Gospel is where the metaphor of Jesus as the good shepherd and we as the sheep really unfolds. All right? Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, I lay my life down for the sheep. What that video does is it's a metaphor. All right? The sheep really weren't, there were sheep in the Garden of Eden, but they probably didn't eat the forbidden fruit, right? That's all metaphor for our own fallenness, our own sinfulness. It's a playful way of telling the story, and as metaphors often do, they get us to think in a deeper way about who we are. All right, and I wanted to start with that video this evening because what we're going to be talking about tonight are metaphors. Okay, metaphors in the form of parables. So if you look at your sheet, here's where we're going to start working on that this evening. Make sure you got a pen. All right.
Hey, look at it.
All right. We're going to be talking about parables. What is a parable, first off? What's a good definition of a parable, Dalton?
The stories Jesus taught in.
The stories Jesus taught in. Cora?
They're stories that teach us life lessons.
Okay, stories that teach us life lessons. What else? What else can we say about parables? What do you know?
Jesus used them a lot.
Jesus used them a lot. What do you know about parables? Come on, there are lots of them in the New Testament. What do you know about them? What are they? Let's name some parables. What are some parables that you've heard?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, lost sheep. All right.
Lost coin.
Lost coin.
What's that noise?
Go back here. Oh, what about the whale?
That may be a parable.
What about the lions and the
Particle son.
Prodigal son. There we go. All right.
what is that?
Prodigal son. We're going to talk about that one in just a little bit. What are some other parables you know?
The old woman who lost her coin.
Okay, the lost
I said
coin.
that.
You already said that.
Oh.
Okay, so we're sticking like in one chapter of Luke's gospel. Where else did Jesus
Adam
teach?
and
What other? What's that? No, that's
New
not.
Testament? Oh.
So we're in the New Testament. What about soil? Does Jesus have anything to say about
sower. The sower.
The what?
The sower.
Spread seeds.
Okay, so we got the sower. All right. What about the parable where there's a gentleman walking down the road and he gets beat up by bandits?
Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan.
Oh, what about the one where the guy's like hurt and then the priest walks by him or whatever. What is he called?
The Good Samaritan.
Oh,
That's the Good Samaritan. Yeah. You
called
got the
that.
story, you just don't have the title.
Almsgiving, the almsgiving one.
Almsgiving. Give me a little bit more information about that.
It was where this old lady, all these rich
Oh.
people gave a lot of, okay, well, a bunch of these rich people gave a lot of money so they would get noticed, but this old lady who had nothing but one coin, she put her one coin in there.
Yep.
And, it's about giving what you have and not getting noticed.
Very good. So you know the story of that one. That one really doesn't have, it's got a couple of titles, but the story of that one works. So we know parables, they're stories. Let's get a working definition for them. So the first way I want to think about parables is they're teaching stories. So write that down. They're teaching stories. In a nutshell, if somebody asks you what is a parable, you can tell them teaching story. All right? So probably write it down too. Parable. So first, teaching story.
Is that an O?
No, it's like
Change the Y
a
to
bullet.
an
Oh.
All right, so teaching story, that's the first thing that they do. Now, the difference between a parable and a fable, which is also a teaching story,
Fable
is
not
that
real.
fables, well, parables aren't necessarily real.
Fables are
either.
just entertainment.
Fables are entertainment, and generally fables, here's the key. Fables have one lesson that they try to teach. We can try to extrapolate other stuff out of them. Fables have one lesson that they try to teach. The difference with parables is that we can think and imagine about parables in a lot of different ways, which is why Jesus used them to teach. It's perhaps not one lesson that Jesus is trying to communicate. There's something deeper, which is why we're still discussing them, sometimes arguing about parables 2,000 years later. So, they are stories, teaching stories that, what do you think parables try to help us understand?
Life.
God, alright? So,
Someone said life too.
here. So a story that helps us, and here's an important word, helps us, I want to use this one, glimpse. Anybody know what glimpse is?
Yes. Take
What does it
glimpse,
mean?
Like,
Take a
use
look
your
at.
eyes, like you
Oh, good.
just like kind of look at it, just like in a short like.
So it's just a
period of
little
time.
picture, right? Like it's not the whole picture, it's just a little picture. Okay. Here's the important part. A parable helps us to glimpse who God is. Alright? Maybe not give us the whole picture. Maybe not give us the totality of who God is, but a glimpse. And so that's why Jesus uses so many different parables to talk about God. Because God is bigger than we can ever understand. Right? We've talked about that sometimes in our class. God is bigger than we can ever understand. So parables just give us a glimpse of who God is. Alright? What other group or person or thing might parables be talking about?
Life.
Life, but more specifically.
Moral lives. Our lives.
Our lives, right? Who we are. So, help us.
Help us.
You could put it that way. Help us understand who we are. Alright? So, this is how I want to think about parables. They're teaching stories, help us to glimpse who God is, help us to glimpse who we are. Now, that seems like we've narrowed parables down to a very specific moment. But this still gives us a lot of wiggle room, okay? And that's why this lesson is going to be a little bit different than some of the other lessons that we've gone over. Sometimes we can ask, what does Jesus do? And it's very clear. Jesus laid his hands on the little girl and she's raised to new life. What did Jesus do? Jesus calmed the storm when he's on the lake. What did Jesus do? Jesus broke bread and passed it out and everybody had something to eat. Those are more direct stories. Parables don't work like that. And if we put parables in a small box and think they answer just one question, we miss the depth of this. And so we do more wondering. We do more imagining. And that helps us to shape, one, gives us a glimpse of who God is, and two, understand who we are. Alright? So, these are our story. This is our line of thinking tonight. With that, let's turn to Luke chapter 15. So open your Bibles to Luke chapter 15.
1730.
I'll smell it from here.
No, I put it at the beginning of class.
What's the page number?
That's what that is.
1730.
What page is it?
1730.
1730.
1730.
I keep on thinking you're Eli, but he's all the way over there.
Ah, yeah. I'm Elijah.
What page? 1730.
1730.
It's 1730.
You're drawing.
I think this table would like to read first.
I think so.
I'm fine.
I will like to read first.
No,
Wait, I can't.
1730.
I'll read first.
I'll read first. I got it.
We're all in the same ring. You don't have to holler.
What page?
1730.
Wow, Zach.
I flipped there on my first try.
I'll read first.
Can I read first?
No.
Pastor,
Sorry,
Pastor Travis hasn't even said anything yet.
Alright.
Hey.
We're going to read 1 through 7.
Ooh, I'm reading.
So we're gonna start with Jairus and then go
River.
counterclockwise, okay? So read clearly, verse at a time, everybody follow along.
Parable of the lost sheep. Now, all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him.
And the Pharisees and scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them."
So he told them this parable. Which one of you having 100 sheep and losing one of them does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices.
And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep. I have found my sheep that was lost."
Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need to repentance.
All right. 1 through 7, thank y'all. Okay, so here's the difference that we're gonna work with. I'm not gonna ask you specifics about the parable. I want you to look at that first question. This is what parables do for us. To the best of our ability, we're going to do this silently. So, this is the individual question I want you to ask yourself. Based on what you just heard, who or what do you relate to in this story? Alright, initial response. Who or what do you relate to in this story? So on your sheet. We're reflecting for ourselves first.
We're writing it on the sheet.
Yep, you're writing it on the sheet.
Like, what do we stand for in the story?
Yep, who or what do you relate to? How do you see yourself in the story?
They go to the restroom.
No.
They asked me.
Well, as you look from, like Obi-Wan Kenobi from my Obi-Wan.
There.
We are not Sonic.
I like exclamation marks, okay?
Right? Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Alright. So this is one way to encounter a parable. Alright, tonight I'm kind of building a toolbox for you for ways to encounter parables. And one, when we hear a parable of Jesus, one question that we can ask ourselves is, who or what do I relate to in this story? We can start with ourselves. Who or what do I relate to in this story? What are some of the answers y'all came up with? Somebody that hasn't given me an answer yet tonight. Somebody that normally... River.
I put myself as I see me as one of the sheep of the 99 that never left.
Okay. One of the 99 that never left. All right. What are some other answers that we got? Jairus.
I see myself as a shepherd.
Okay. The one that goes out and finds. Okay.
I did the same thing as Jairus.
Okay. The shepherd, the one that goes out and seeks.
I find myself as the lost sheep.
Okay. All right. Now, here's the catch with parables, is that we start to imagine and start to wonder, and then I bet you, if you start to think about your faith journey so far, you could see yourself as one of the 99 sheep that hasn't gone away. You could see yourself as one of the ones that's wandered and been lost and needed to be brought back in. You could even see yourself as the shepherd who goes out and helps to find the one sheep that's lost, right? There's a depth and a richness to these stories, all right? So, one point of entry into the story is who or what am I in the story, all right? And we can all be different things at different times in our life. All right, let's push on. Let's move to the next table here. Karis, if you'll start reading for us. We're going to keep going 8 through 10. So Karis, Daisy, Dalton, I think that's 3 verses. If y'all read that for us.
The parable of the lost coin. What woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it?
When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost."
Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents.
All right. Another question that we can ask ourselves is right there. How does this parable show us who God is? So take a minute, reflect on that silently, think about it. How does this parable give us a glimpse of God?
What are you laughing at?
All right. What does this parable teach us about God? Raise your hand. Anybody want to share their answer? Maybe somebody that hasn't shared tonight yet. Anybody?
She already did.
Somebody that hasn't shared tonight. We'll give you an opportunity first.
When God loses one of us and he finds us again, he's happy.
So there's rejoicing when one of us being lost is found. All right? Jairus?
God's like the lamp, he shines the way for us so other people can find us.
Oh. God is the light so that others can help us when we are lost. Communal aspect to it.
Or help us find other people.
Okay? Or help us find other people?
That when we become lost, he won't stop looking for us no matter what.
God will never stop looking for us. All right? Cora?
God is like the woman because he searches for all of his children to bring them to him.
There we go. All right, you see? That's a very, very, very deep picture of God. Not one-sided, but multi-dimensional. All right? God is much, much more than a single character. Again, we're trying to get at, I don't know, the capacity of God to be in relationship with us, which I don't think we ever fully understand. Now, so that's one level. Those are 2 questions we can approach the story with. Now, one question that struck me the first time I heard it, about the first 2 parables, let's think about it. What shepherd would really leave 99 perfectly good sheep to go after one? And what woman would tear apart the house for 1 silver coin?
What if you never find it?
All right?
What if you never find
I'll
it?
be pretty mad.
And you keep looking.
Never mind.
Then
Yeah,
you
the
die.
sheep is dead.
Okay.
And the sheep like, comes to you right when you're about to die.
Eli, will you read for us? I want everybody to look on page 1731. The top right-hand corner. Do you see the little lamp next to the top paragraph there in the margin?
1731.
Oh, I thought that was a hat.
The little lamp. Eli, will you read that for us?
Little lamb, right?
These coins are
Drachmas.
drachmas, each worth about 1 day's wage. Even if these are the only coins she had, could a woman in the ancient world set aside all other tasks to look for one lost coin? The answer is no. The woman would do anything to find the lost coin.
All right, so a reasonable answer to the question, what shepherd would go out and find the one, leaving the 99, and what woman would tear apart the house looking for 1 coin? One of the answers is nobody does it, all right? That's not the way our world works, okay? Because from an economic standpoint, you've got 99 good sheep. You're still going to make it, all right? Nobody's going to go out and find the one. What Jesus is doing here is making a radical statement. He's painting a really radical picture of who God is and of who we are. So we're dwelling here. This is not how the world responds, okay? That gets us back. Jesus is telling these stories, perhaps for a particular reason. If you would pick up, we're going to go all the way back to verses 1 and 2. Shannon, if you'll read for us verse 1 and Lauren verse 2. Yep, go for it.
Okay. Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near to listen to him.
And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them."
All right. So that happens right before Jesus tells these parables. All right. The sinners and the tax collectors are coming near to Jesus. They're wanting to hear what he has to say. And really what's happening is there's probably a meal going on. Jesus is probably sitting at the table with the sinners and tax collectors. And what happens?
He tells a story.
What happens first, though?
The sinners.
Who comes in after the sinners and tax collectors?
The Pharisees and scribes.
The Pharisees and scribes. And how do they feel about this meal?
I feel like it's not like fair that they get to, like the poor people and the sinners get to go eat with Jesus exactly the same as the Pharisees do, because they're like two different people and they didn't deserve it.
Okay, so they've got that grumbling feeling, this is not fair, Jesus, why are you doing this? In the New Testament, Jesus is probably closest in status to the Pharisees and the scribes, all right? He's probably on the same level of society. He's got the most in common with the Pharisees because just like Jesus, the Pharisees are teachers. And so the Pharisees are upset, Jesus, why are you having a meal with these sinners and tax collectors? You should be eating with us because we're the same people. All right? We're on the same social level. But they're upset because those who are potentially lost are being drawn near to Jesus. All right? And Jesus is welcoming them in. Sharing a meal with somebody in the time of Jesus is a very intimate thing. It builds relationships. All right? Meals today are still very intimate moments when we turn the TV off and put the phones away and we have a time to share conversation. Important things happen at the dinner table. And the Pharisees know this. And Jesus knows this. And now the sinners and the tax collectors, those who were lost, those who have been pushed to the margins, also know this. And they have a place with Jesus. All right? The Pharisees and the scribes, they're grumbling. And so we get these two stories about a shepherd going out to seek the one. And then what happens after that one sheep is found? There's rejoicing, right? There's a big party. The woman tears the house apart to find one silver coin. When she finds it, what happens? She rejoices, right? There's a party. What's the statement that always goes with the party? What does Jesus tell us at the end of each story?
If you do something good, you'll be rewarded.
There will be more rejoicing for one sinner who repents than 99 righteous ones.
All right, so there's more joy in heaven for the one person who repents.
Yeah.
All right. There's joy, there's a celebration. There's a celebration when one of the lost folks comes back into the fold. All right? There's a celebration. There's great joy. I'm going to stop there because there's one more movement to these parables. And it's a longer one. You probably know it as the parable of the prodigal son. And we're going to read the whole thing. So I need everybody to pay attention because we're probably going to have to snake around the tables to get all of this story read. Jacob, I believe you have not read yet. You're going to pick up in verse 11, and then we're going to go to Zach, and then Shelby and Cora, and we're going to kind of do this figure 8 thing. Everybody get the order of the readers?
How are we going to get Karis in there?
Karis, you're going to read Dane, Karis, Daisy, all right? And then back to Dalton. Cool?
Wait, so it's kind of like Jacob, Zachary, me, and
Yep.
Cora? Okay,
Yep.
got it.
It's like
I'll help you.
this, and then
It's like a figure.
that.
So everybody's got to be paying attention because there's some quick verses in here. All right, take it away for us, Mr. Yansky.
The parable of the prodigal son, prodigal and his brother. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons.
The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them.
A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in desolate living.
When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country and had begun to be in need.
So he went and hired himself out to one of the civilians of the country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs.
He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything.
But when he came to himself he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger."
I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you.
I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands."
So he set off and went to his father, but while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him.
Then the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son."
But the father said to his slave, "Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet.
And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate.
For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate.
Now that his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing.
Zachary. 26.
He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on.
He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has got him back safe and sound."
Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him.
But he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even the young goats so that I might celebrate
But when this son of yours came back who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him."
Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours."
But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.
All right. So, we get to the third movement of parables about being lost and found. All right? So here's another way. This one's got a lot of details in it. So we can ask ourselves the same questions. Who or what are you in this story? All right? Who or what are you in this story? Could you perhaps be the younger brother? Or maybe you're the older brother. Or maybe you're someone out in the field working with the older brother who hears his grumbling. All right? Who or what are you in the story? Another way of coming at this parable is, who is God in the story? There seems to be a more clear answer to this. Who is God in the story?
The Father.
The Father, right? The Father who drops everything, and before his Son even has a chance to tell his story, is already welcoming him back into the family. Give him a coat, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, giving him symbols of status. You're no longer dead and lost in the world, but you're back and you're my son, right? That's God welcoming into the family, all right? So, one way that I like to think about this parable is God's relationship to us, all right? And that, what I want to call that here is another way of knowing. I didn't put that on your sheet. This is another way of knowing. So we can think about this pattern, all right? First one, all right? First one. First one is recognition. Okay? Something is recognized. Something is understood. All right? Recognition. What are some things that are recognized in this story? Who has a moment of recognition?
The younger son.
How?
When he's recognized when he spends all the money.
Okay.
He's recognized for coming back.
Recognized for coming back. I think you were onto something there. So there's he remembers, he recognizes, he understands.
That what he did was wrong.
Okay, so he understands that there's something bad that's gone on. Okay. What else is recognized? We had, I think I passed over you. The father recognizing the son. Okay, so the father recognizes the son from what? Far away, right? He didn't even make it up the driveway, and Dad's already running down the driveway after him.
Why you come back?
All right. Okay, so father recognizes, in one way, he recognizes the one son before he gets there, and then he's got that son right next to him, all dressed up as part of the family, and then he recognizes what?
He forgot the other one.
There's another son. And so he goes out into the field to find him. So we have a father that doesn't just seek out one son who was lost, but recognizes, hey, we're not complete until I go out and find the other one. So there's levels of recognition here. All right, the son recognizing, one, my dad's really rich. We skipped over that one, right? My dad's loaded. Okay, I want some of that money, Dad. I want my inheritance now, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make what I can of myself. And then what does he do?
Spend it all on prostitutes.
Oh, I don't know about that.
That's
We didn't get to that. That's what the older brother says, but I don't think the older brother is very reasonable in his assessment. He's probably what? Jealous. And so he's throwing his younger brother under the bus. We don't know what the younger brother does. We just know that he goes out and spends all of his money. He could have spent all of his money building condominiums that crashed into the Mediterranean Sea, and his investment is gone. But he recognizes what? I'm hungry, I'm working for this guy who's got pigs. I recognize what about my father?
He's rich.
He's still really rich, right? I can go home and I can eat better than I can right now when I'm eating with the pigs. There's a moment of recognition there. And then we get, the brother, what? He's making up the story. Oh, Father, I've sinned against you, I've sinned against heaven. But what happens?
He accepts him, he forgives him, and
Without what?
punishment.
Without punishment, but without the younger brother doing what?
Speaking.
Never gets to tell his story, right? So the younger brother, he's got probably a while to come up with this great excuse as to why he's done what he's done. And before he can ever apologize, what's happening?
His dad already forgave him.
His dad is right there, putting a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet and a cloak on him, recognizing that my son is back from being wherever he was in the world. Yes. All right, and then there's the recognition, I've got one son back, and then what happens? Other son not there. What about that other son in the field? What does he recognize?
Hey, he's killing the fattened calf for that.
Okay, but what does he hear first?
The music.
His
Music, right? So he recognizes there's something going on at the house. There's a big party. Okay, big party. Little secret about killing the fatted calf is that that's not something that happens all the time in Jesus' day. They don't have refrigerators, and so when you kill a large animal, you got to eat it all pretty quickly, otherwise it goes bad. And so they didn't eat meat as often as we do. And so to kill the fatted calf, that's a big deal. This is not just a family get-together where dad and brothers are going to sit together at the table. The whole village is showing up, right? This is a big, big party. Older brother recognizes this, and what does he want to do?
He wants to have a party for him.
He's saying like, hey, I worked harder than him. He squandered your property, and I've still been here in the field.
That's
And you didn't even give me a little goat.
Okay, is that a reasonable response?
No.
Yeah. I mean, if that had happened to you, wouldn't you be a little upset? Your younger brother comes back and they throw a party for him? I mean, that's a reasonable human response for us.
Yeah, it's like you're working at your job really hard, and then someone else just goes on like coffee break for 2 hours, and then comes out.
They get a promotion.
Yeah, but they get a promotion. You're just still rocking the mail job.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, go
So we
Dale.
see the layers here. All right, so one layer, recognition. That doesn't just happen once, it's happening all over the place. Next level, I'm losing time here, is The search. All right, the search. Now I forgot to say, you can also do this with the lost sheep and the lost coin, right? The shepherd realizes, hey, there's a sheep lost. Okay? The lady recognizes, hey, pulls a change out of her pocket. I've only got 9 coins. So there's a recognition that something is different. Second, the search. All right? Shepherd goes out, searches for the sheep. Lady tears the house apart looking for the coin.
The father looks for the older son.
Ah, older son, not the younger one, right?
Right.
Right. Okay, so there's a different level. Why might that be a difference?
I'm treating them equally.
You'd be treating them equally.
Because he forgot the older.
It's not a party on us. Everybody's here.
That's a good question to ask. Okay, see how we're starting to layer these stories? All right, we're not going to get to all of the answers this evening because we can't, because there have been people answering these questions for 1,000 years. Okay, so recognition, search. What's another main element of all 3 of these parables?
Forgiveness.
Rejoice. There we go. How did you know I was going there?
I don't know.
Rejoicing. Hey, let's throw a party. I found my sheep. Rejoicing.
Yay.
Hey, let's throw a party. I found my sheep. Hey, let's throw a party. I found this coin. Hey, let's throw a party. My son that was out in the world, I didn't know if he was dead or alive, is back. Let's throw a party. Hey, let's throw a party. Your brother is back. Let's throw a party. Okay?
Something weird that you would do, throw a party over finding like a singular coin.
Yeah, I found a coin and I'm gonna spin it on a party.
Until I found it.
And
Yep.
the other ones.
Especially,
all the
yeah.
others.
Yep. Because lighting a lamp is not a cheap thing. You gotta buy oil, right? And if all you've got is 10 coins, how much money are you investing into this party? Right? A lot. Okay. So, recognition, search, rejoicing. The last step.
Miss.
What is it?
Miss.
The last step is fellowship. Okay? Alright, it's fellowship. So, in each of these moments, besides the rejoicing, because you can rejoice, perhaps by yourself, you can, yeah, I found my sheep, yeah, I found my coin. But the fellowship points to that R word that we talk about a lot. What's that R word?
Relationship.
Relationship, alright? Alright, relationship. At the end of all of these stories, there's a relationship. One, it's inviting people to a party. It's not just celebrating by yourself, it's inviting people to the table with you. Ah, we're back there at the table. We're back there at the table. Important place for Jesus. There's also fellowship where? Not just on earth, but where?
In heaven.
In heaven, right?
Yeah.
There's fellowship with God and the angels. So there's this cosmic aspect to this being lost and being found. Okay? And then those 2 questions there at the bottom, who do you think God is in the story and who are we? I'll leave those up for you. But to tie this up, because then we got to transition. To tie this up, this story, told in 3 parts. Luke chapter 15 is probably all one story, told in 3 parts. Remember how it started. Jesus is doing what? We read it a few minutes ago. Jesus does what to start the story?
Wait, start what story?
To start,
Each with sinners and
He's eating. Oh,
he's eating with who?
the sinners.
Sinners and tax collectors.
Pharisees.
And who gets mad at him? Pharisees and the scribes. Alright? So, they are upset. They are not doing what?
rejoicing.
They are not rejoicing. Okay? So maybe one way to understand this parable is Jesus is being critical of those who are righteous. Those who are already in a good relationship with God, perhaps. He's saying, look, you guys are following the rules. You folk are getting it correct. But the tax collectors and sinners, they've been lost. They've been out. They've been away from the table for a long time. And now they're back. And so maybe what should you be doing instead of grumbling at me?
Being happy for them.
Rejoicing.
Rejoicing and doing what?
Fellowshipping, relationship.
Which means
mingling
and
getting
Making
together
a
and
relationship.
liking each
relationship.
other.
But what is Jesus doing at the time?
Eating.
Eating.
Being
Sit at the
friends.
table with us. Share the meal with us, alright? Which brings it all back down to us. And I'm not going to answer this question for you. This is the question that we answer with our lives all the time. It's what we're invited into. Are we going to rejoice? One, are we going to rejoice when we recognize that, hey, I've been found, I am a lost, sinful person, God has taken care of that through Jesus Christ, I have been welcomed back to the table. We're going to rejoice in that moment. Alright, we do that on Sunday mornings. Are we going to rejoice when people that we may have labeled as lost, as sinners, as outcasts, are we going to rejoice when they come back to the table? Okay, that's the question for us. Are we going to be a group of people that grumbles like the Pharisees? Or are we going to be a people who rejoice? Alright, everybody stand up, shake it out.